So I would like to welcome you all to X0219, the February meet of the second division of the Pacific Northwest region of the NMRA. Tonight, well, this afternoon, our presenters will be Bernard Hellen of Mini Prints, which you may or may not have heard of. It's a relatively new company specializing in 3D printing of animals, people, vehicles, and things he calls oddities. After that, Richard Kürschner will present on his computer-aided traffic generation system. And after that, we'll have open mic. So I'm going to flip this on my scene to the speaker view. And Bernard, the show is yours. Everybody else, please mute.
Thanks, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's a very cold, snowy, and windy day in Toronto, where I am right now. I'm in the Great White North, and I'll see if I can take this out the window for a minute to show you what it looks like. I'm not sure whether you can see out the window, but I'm coming to you from Mini Prints World Headquarters, which is a new commercial space I got, named by Gordy Miniature Printerland. So I have a little presentation that I'd like to show, and happy to answer any questions. I'll talk a little bit about the space and then give you a tour. Right now, I'm just catching up on some orders from the move. I've got a bunch of printers going behind me here, you can see. So let me just plug in here and I'll share my screen. All righty. Okay. So I have a little presentation that I'll pull up. Share screen. All right, can you see that? Whoops, back to meeting.
We can see it.
Okay, great. I've just lost video for 1 second, so let me just plug something in here.
Well, hopefully he'll be able to rejoin us, but until then, Richard.
All right.
Computer-aided traffic generation.
Let's see if I can share. Hopefully you can see. Probably have to hit that button. Can you see me now?
Yes, we can.
All right. So welcome to my way of playing with trains. No, this is not the stuff that our previous leader does with running trains actually on the computer. This is coming up with new ways of doing generating the traffic itself. I am going to be giving this at the PNR convention this May. I am looking to practice this in front of a live audience. Please don't hesitate to holler if there is something wrong or send me some feedback afterwards. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, come on. There we go. So the topics we're going to talk about today are realistic traffic, shipment plans, using a computer to do this, and some rather interesting non-traffic benefits I discovered after using this. Me, I like computers. Get right down to it. That's what I like to do. I like realistic operations, and quite frankly, I'm lazy. I model in N scale, and I model in the late 1920s. And that, between those things, that's how this came about. But it really came from the realistic operations side of it. Realism for some people is getting a long string of cars that look beautiful and are absolutely accurate. In N scale, that's possible, but less, or a lot more work, let's put it that way. I don't find that to be the enjoyable part of realism for me. A gondola is a gondola. My idea of realism is the accurate simulation of traffic across your system. So what's traffic? And this one's real easy, folks. It's the purposeful movement of shipments across the layout. It's not randomly sending a boxcar to a siding. It's not dropping a stock car at a coal dock, though that would be realistic in some cases. It's generally not. What creates traffic? Four-cycle waybills? No. Switch lists? No. Industries create shipments, and that creates the traffic. Using traffic to generate waybills and switch lists is the right way to do it, not the other way around. By using waybills and switch lists, you are absolutely backwards in what you're doing if you're trying to model a realistic railroad. And I hear what you're saying. Four-cycle waybills are traditional. And yeah, according to a certain musical that was out many years back, so was a Fiddler on the Roof. But it's not necessarily the right thing to do. Four-cycle waybills are repetitive. They're based only on the cars you have. They're repetitive. They're made up of fixed steps. You can't change it. They don't realistically handle empties. You have to do something else to get the empties to work right. They're repetitive. And once you've created a four-cycle card, it's inflexible. It is fixed. If you wanted to change something, you've got to throw out that card and create a new one that may have problems as well. If you have to change a name on the card, you change the name of the industry, you have to change the card or scratch it out, and that looks crappy in my mind, but that's me. And by the way, did I mention four-cycle waybills are repetitive? The key thing here is they don't match what the actual industry needs. Yes, an industry might need a boxcar, but how often does it need that boxcar? How many boxcars does it need? Does it also need gondolas? It's just not there. Another comment I've heard is that switch lists are realistic. And they are, but they were handwritten in 1928. They weren't these computer generated things. So if you really want to use realistic switch lists, you can't use a computer. You have to handwrite them. Now, the computer programs that generate switch lists are really not that realistic when you look at it in detail. They're based on fixed sidings. They're based on fixed train links. They're based on fixed spur links and fixed train schedules and the cars you own. They are not based on any kind of reality that an industry needs. Industries don't care how long your sidings are. They don't care if you own a car or not. They want what they want. Now, there are some tricks to get around this. There are some hacks that you can put in place for some of these issues, not all of them. The other part is I'm not trashing really four-cycle waybills or switch lists. If you like them, go ahead and use them. If they work for you and you're happy, it's your railroad. Go for it. I encourage you to. But for me, it wasn't the right thing. I didn't want to have the hacks, and I wanted my traffic to be industry based. So I went with what's known as the shipment plan. This has been seen in publications before, where you list off the raw materials, the packaging, the products, and the waste materials. But it's just a list so you can get an idea of what type of cars are specifically needed for your industry. This shipment plan is more detailed than that. It goes into the frequency. How often do you need that boxcar of packing materials? How many boxcars of packing materials do you need at that frequency? And one thing that's just not covered anywhere is how long does it take to load and unload those cars? You don't, in real world, you don't just take a cut of cars off a industry track and put another cut of cars on, because often some of those cars are still loading and unloading. You have to take time and do the right moves to make it realistic. The key here is this is independent of your railroad, and this is just like the real world. Again, the industry doesn't care about how long your spurs are. It doesn't care about how long your trains need to be. It doesn't care if you own the right equipment. It expects you to give it that tank car of acid, and that's your problem as a railroader to provide. If you're curious, these are some sample shipment plans. You'll see that these are more detailed than you typically would see in hobbyist publications. This is one of the inputs and outputs for Nosmo King's factory. It gets a load of sawdust from Larson Mill in the town of Larson in a gondola. It has a 29% chance of happening on a particular day. We've got other ones that gets a 14% chance of cut stone coming from the north, and another 7% chance of cut stone coming from the south. Each of these, it comes in one car shipments. You will find other things that go out, in this case, in 2 to 4 car shipments. It has days to unload. This one will unload in one day, but it loads, this loads in one day at Larson Mill, but it takes up to 3 days to unload it once it gets to Nosmo's plant. You will see some of these are zeros. In general, that means that it's a staging. Don't care about it in staging. Though this is another one where it's going to staging. You will find some cases here, though, where they just unload the flat cars directly into the log pond and take it right back out. So that's counted as a 0-day unloading. Other typical things would be like if you're got a drop bottom gondola and just dumping your load of coal as is. So I talked earlier about I didn't want random movements, and here I am talking about probabilities and ranges. And in a sense, yeah, I am doing random movements, but not really. According to a very wise man, stochastic and Monte Carlo simulation of industrial processes are widely accepted and have been shown to accurately represent those processes in the aggregate. In other words, rolling a lot of dice a lot of times gives you realistic results. And this has been shown through a lot of simulation studies for many years since they've had computers doing this type of work. It's well known, and it does represent reality, even though it might feel like randomness underneath. If I don't want to go to the trouble of modeling every industry on my layout with all the inputs it needs continuously, determining how much process it's getting, how many orders it's getting, this is good enough. At some point, you do have to decide and make that call. So where does the computer aided come in? I could roll a bunch of those dice. I've got a whole bunch of those D&D dice from my older previous days, and I could write handbills by hand. But as I said, I'm lazy. So I could write a computer program that would do all that for me. But I'm really lazy. I could do this on a spreadsheet and have the spreadsheet create the waybills, but that's a bloody lot of work still. So what I ended up doing was going with Microsoft Access to convert the shipment plans into waybills. Now, I have been railing against waybills. And no, I don't say they're unrealistic. They are very realistic. That's what the railroads actually use. They don't use for cycle waybills. They don't keep stacks of waybills for future use. They have one waybill for one shipment, and then it's, well, filed in their case, our case, essentially thrown out. And note that these waybills are representing real traffic. We're not trying to do something where we're using the waybill to generate traffic somehow by pulling 7 waybills out of a stack for today's run. And if you don't use waybills, well, what are you going to use? That really is reality in the railroading world. And if you like switch lists, well, go ahead, create your switch lists handwritten from your waybills, and you'll be really realistic. And yeah, getting back to the other statement there with that little asterisk, there are other ways to do this. And I will be talking about that near the end here. Now, there were probably some cringes when I mentioned Microsoft Access. There are some I know that think Microsoft is the evil empire, and some that think Access is a piece of crap. Well, for me, it was free, and it might be for you as well. If you work at a company that has access for you for free, you can do that. If you're a student or an educator, you can get access, if not free, very low cost. But the thing that I liked about Access is it made it very easy to develop the program. It already has reporting capabilities built in. It already has excellent programming support for that little bit that I needed for this. I did look at the workalikes, LibreOffice and OpenOffice, and frankly, they were clunky. They're a good 10 years behind Microsoft Access. Maybe they would work if somebody had spent a lot of time with them. I don't know. I didn't feel like spending that kind of time. There are free free databases out there. MySQL is one very popular one, but you have to do so much coding around that to give you the input forms, the output reports. It's not worth it. You're still programming. You're still programming raw code in that sense. Very recently, I've come across some free online databases. You might have heard this called as database as a service. Um, Functionally, they work at a low level, but I haven't seen that they have the reporting or programming capabilities. And that could be that they don't have them in the free version. It could be that I just haven't explored them enough. I encourage you, if that sounds like a way you want to go for it. I poo-pooed Excel earlier, but it really was my second choice. It was actually my first choice. I went to it and had something up and running within 10 minutes, but it lacked that reporting capability that Access has and makes so easy to produce the cards in the format you want. Yeah, there are other computer programs out there. JMRI is free. ShipIt is well respected. Jeff, I can't remember the one you've been touting, but it works as well. So this is different though. This isn't the same concept as those. This program focuses on the sales department is the way to think of it. What does the industries that I serve need? That's the sales department. They send me the waybills or they send me the need for the waybill, and I provide them the service of bringing a cart to them and taking it away. Local agents are responsible for finding the empties. The program isn't. You've got to look and find a close empty or call up somebody to get an empty. Yard masters don't follow a pre-programmed sheet of paper that says, put this car on this train in this location. It's up to the yard master to figure that out. And train masters can end up calling extras if they need to, if they get too many people showing up. Or if they don't get enough people showing up, they can annul some of the schedules. You won't find that capability in these other programs I've mentioned above. So it's not only more realistic for the industry needs, the key that I found is it was so much easier to write if by ignoring simulating the railroad. Simulating the industries is easy. Simulating the railroad, keeping track of all the cars That's the difficult part. And this program generates waybills. It doesn't generate switch lists. Personally, I'm not a fan of switch lists. I don't grok them. They're just not my style. So the next part of this, the next couple pages are the high level design. You can go ahead and fall asleep for the next couple pages if you like. If you want, I can go into far more detail at the end if there's questions. And if you really want more detail on the work, Model Railroad and Hobbyists Running Extra published my article back in the December issue. And it has the ability, or if you're a subscriber to this Running Extra, you can find a copy of the database that you can download and play with to your heart's content. So let's get into this. In essence, the program is made up of 4 tables, one for car types, towns, industries, and then what I'm usually calling the master shipments table. These are small tables, just basic information. Car type is X boxcar, XA automobile boxcar. That's all it keeps track of. Towns are essentially the same. Industries are a little bit more, but not much more complicated. And the shipments are where all the detail is actually kept. Each of these has a form that goes with it, so you can do the entry and editing of the data. Towns, cars, and industries are all simple. Shipments is big enough that it requires 2 forms to make your work easy. The blue items are queries that pull data out of these tables and reformat them in some useful way, hopefully useful. Update shipments is the heart of the entire program. This is what looks at each one of the lines in the shipment table and decides, do I have a shipment of that today? And that's what these 2 bits of code do. And I want to stress 2 bits of code. I think there's about 10 lines of code and 7 of them are boilerplate. This is real simple to write from a coding standpoint. In order to do anything useful with this data, I then have to pull all the data together from these tables and produce one essentially large table with all that information. From there, I can get those shipments by destination and shipments by source reports that we were seeing earlier. From there, we then go into the waybill generation activity, and we remove all the lines from that table that don't have shipments. So essentially coming out of here are today's shipments. Some of these shipments are multi-block, 2 car, 3 car blocks. And so I have to create a separate record for each car in that block. At some point, if this particular car needs to be captured as an empty, this is the query that will flag that and create a record for that empty. And that creates a waybill that will be an empty waybill that generates or runs a car from wherever it is to your industry. We also need to load that car, and both of these are only triggered off if the industry is on your layout. If the industry isn't on the layout, this query is triggered, and it creates a record coming from staging to your industry. If the industry is shipping, either, and this would be typically if they've come in on this path, if it's a shipping industry, we have to create a real honest goodness waybill that says move it on to wherever it's supposed to go, either staging or to another industry. If it ends up going to another industry, or if it's an inbound car, we have to create an entry for it to unload. All these various records are then combined, sorted, and it produces a daily summary, so I can take a look at what's happening today and the actual waybills we need to look at. I'm sorry, I found out too late that this is a little blurry here, and I'll make sure this gets cleaned up. Um, these are the tables, the details behind it. As you can see, car types is a very simple table. It just keeps the code G and the type name gondola. This allows you to, in your cards, if you want to type or have it print out gondola or the AAR code of G, whatever you would like it to do. I do, and I haven't mentioned it before, but I do track my cars in here, but it's not really germane to this discussion, so I'm leaving it out. This is primarily so I can have my inventory of my cards in the same place in one database. Towns are pretty much the same as car types. It's a code if that's what you want to use for your waybills, or it's the actual printed town name. And industries are a little bit more. It's the code and the industry name, and then whether or not it's a on layout location. Empty return, I haven't really used that yet, so that's kind of something that's pending. As I said, all this is controlled then by the shipment table. The table says this industry is a source of a shipment, and this is where you spot a car for that. This other industry is the destination of that car, and this is where you spot the car at that location. This is what you're holding. This is what car type you need. And then all the probabilities that we were seeing earlier, likelihood of the shipment, minimum, maximum count for the number of cars, etc. These items at the bottom are the ones that piece of code I told you about loads back in whenever it is called. It puts in 0 cars if there's no shipments today, and puts in 1, 2, however many cars if there are shipments. Okay, that was the heavy lift part of this. If those of you that fell asleep can wake back up. The program itself then generates a series of reports. As needed, I can do these master shipment by source and destination reports, and you've already seen those, bits of those. There's also a daily shipment report, and this tells me where it's coming from, how many cars, where it's going to. Don't need to run this, but it is an interesting report that we'll talk about a little later, because it tells you how many cars you're going to need today. How many empties am I going to have to find for my layout today? And then there is the waybills. These are printed up on this particular sample here, 12 to a sheet, and then cut out by hand. There's ways of getting around that if you want, but this was by far the simplest and cheapest method I was aware of. Just print them up, 12 up, and then cut them out and use them in the layout. Since they are disposable, I don't care that I'm only using simple pieces of paper. If I was having to have longer term usage, yeah, I'd want cardstock, but I don't feel that's necessary in this case. They're not going to live that long that they'll get dog-eared. So to use the waybills really isn't that different than what you might be familiar with the 4-cycle cards. There are card pockets that I've generated, and that comes out of that cars table. And these represent empty cars. They are on the layout just like this, with no car cards, with no waybills in them. And it's expected that engineers going through will pick these up and take them in the right direction to the right location. You know, in this case, this was an old version of my layout, which just had a single east staging area, but that was the expectation. The engineer going through would pick it up going east. Anytime you see one of these cards on your layout in a box, it's usable to capture. You can go ahead and grab it for whatever is really needed, one of your real waybills. Now, a shipment, the way I'm doing it here is 1 to 4 waybills, or 1 to 4 slips of paper might be a better term if you prefer. You just shove them into the card pocket and then operate on that card operate on that car, excuse me, with whatever is on the top waybill. Now, for picking an empty, any shipment coming from staging, it doesn't matter. Whatever available car you use off the layout. If you're on the layout, though, you need to do a little bit more work. If there's the right kind of empty already at the industry, that's what you want to do. If there's the right kind already in the same town, pick that instead. If there's none of those, but there's one in the nearby yard, well, put it in there. And if you can't find an empty of that kind anywhere on your layout, put it on the next train inbound from staging. This is what gives you some of that variation that you will not see in a 4-cycle card, because you don't ever have to worry about finding an empty. But that's exactly what the agents in the real railroad world do. Now, if you want, you can also use the foreign road direction of movement rules. And they can be kind of complex, but once you understand them, they're really not that difficult. The key here is that all of these are a pain in the butt to program. But once you understand it, once you got it, it's easy. It's not a difficult thing to remember. And the agents, they didn't have a program to do it. They just knew that, well, this load's going west, so I got to pick AT and SF car, or this load's going east, so I got to pick looks like we got a PRR car here that we can use, and that's how they did it. And as I mentioned, when the activity on this top waybill is complete, you remove it and start acting on the next card. So the first one, the top card initially, is what we call an empty waybill. And this tells you to find an empty somewhere, and it routes it to, in this case, Carlton Forks Freight House. The other key that I have is you can put in notes so that if some other car type is appropriate, let's use it, rather than just limiting it only to boxcars. Once it gets to Carlton Forks Freight House, and you notice there's no spotting information here, so you can spot it anywhere, we go into a loading delay. And that's what these @ symbols, it means essentially 2 days. So if you need to get past that car, you have to take a little extra time to make sure it's closed up properly and switched out, switched back in, so that it can be finished loading. Essentially, you just mark it off. Then the next day, after the next operating system, mark the second one off, or in reality, just pull out that slip of paper. This operating session after that, this is now the top card. And it's a regular waybill. And it's telling us to go from where we're currently located to Linsport at the Sealy Dettini and Fugger transfer warehouse. And in this case, we do have, they specifically wanted it door 2. And so the next train through takes it to the yard, nearest yard, runs it into the next train in that direction, and we're good to go. Once it gets to C, D, and F, well, we have an unloading delay. And again, it's the same thing. In this case, it only takes 1 day to unload, and you throw it out, and you're then at an empty car card again. It's now an empty car that you can go all the way back through this process all over again. As I said, it's not particularly different than 4-cycle cars, but instead of rotating and flipping and twisting, you get it, just take the top card off and do the next card. The thing that I found that surprised the heck out of me after I wrote this was some interesting benefits. It gives me the ability to do reality checks, and it really supports ease of changes, and either to the layout or to myself, as it turned out. So from a reality check standpoint, you can generate several days worth of shipments. Just check the daily summaries. Do they make sense to you? Is that what you're expecting? Are you seeing nothing going to a particular town? Are you seeing too much go to that particular town? You can go back in and adjust the numbers and run it again and see what you get. Another item is if you take the waybill and it's just sitting there because you don't have an empty, and you start getting a pile of these where you need now 20 gondola sets of gondolas for this. Well, you just discovered something about your layout. You need to buy more gondolas. So now you can go to your enabler and say, look, honey, I've got 20 unfulfilled orders here. Uh, okay, so it is proof though that you do need more gondolas. On the other hand, what happens if you're getting a buildup of hoppers, for example? They're just gathering dust on the staging area. They're not being used. This becomes the proof that you really don't need that many if they're just gathering dust. So you can sell them off as one option if you like, and buy enough or get enough money to buy some gondolas that you need. On the other hand, you can try experimenting by adding a new industry that needs those uh, hoppers. Preload the shipment tables with that industry or that entire branch if that's what you end up wanting to do, and run it through a few simulations. At no point does your railroad ever have to match what's in the computer. That's one huge benefit from this. You can keep playing until you get it right. And once you got it right, then you can go ahead and use those waybills for real. You can really print them out and cut them apart and use them. But until then, you're not wasting anything. You're not wasting any effort, and you aren't having to, well, I guess I got to move all those cars around now. You don't have to do that. You just end up playing until you get it right. The other ability you've got is flexibility to your layout changes. So let's say that you divorce your first wife and you marry a new one, and now you've got to change Lindsport to Lindaport or Port Linda. Are you going to change all those cards on your layout? No, you can do a very quick change in the database, and it's suddenly changed for everything. Another thing is you've done a lot of research on your favorite industry, and 5 years down the road, you suddenly discover, oh yeah, once a month they get a tank car full of acid. You don't have to go and find a bunch of existing cards to cobble in or throw out those cards and recreate a whole bunch of new cards. You just put in one entry in the database, and from then on, you're getting your once a month shipment of acid. Another problem that some people run into is their mother-in-law gives them a helium car in N scale. You should be happy that your mother-in-law knows you model N scale. Most of them won't, but when they do, this is wonderful. So you want to run that car across your layout on a regular basis. So put it into the database that you have a helium car that needs to go from north to south. And every once in a while it'll show up and she'll be happy. Now, the last one is what happens if too many or too few operators show up? What are you going to do? If too many, print another day's worth of car cards, or excuse me, of waybills. You're simulating the Christmas rush. And suddenly you're able to call extras. You're able to call second sections. And it's still a realistic distribution of movements across the layout. On the other hand, if you don't have enough operators showing up, well, toss out half the waybills that you print, or only print one of the 2 pages, depending on how it works out for you, and annul some trains, and everybody's still happy. They have their jobs, and you're not somehow overwhelmed with cars on the layout. The other item is the layout. These forms can change as your learning and understanding grows. Originally, I had done this style of car card where I had combined both the delivery location and the delay onto one piece of paper. And I used that for a year or so, and I didn't quite like it. It didn't feel quite right. So this last version I did, I've ended up going with 2, where once it gets delivered, I pull it off, and then they just sit there until you see the blue header, and you know you don't move that card. Kind of like the blue flag in no sense. Well, now that I've played with that some while, I got tired of cutting it out. So I think I may go back to this version. The other thing you can do is, if you're finding that it's getting too hard to read this, you can go to a larger card. Go to a 3x5 card if that's what you want to print out, and you can read it without using reading glasses. If your operators don't know what an XA is, well, then print your cards out using automobile boxcar instead, and they'll know what to go find. So it's a way of being able to make these changes without ever changing the underlying database. It's always there for you. But what if you want to do something completely different? My question to you is, these aren't real waybills that we're doing. Even those really beautifully crafted waybills that famous model railroaders use, that are based on the actual waybill that was used by the particular railroad in March 3rd of 1955, they're not real waybills. They're still fake. So why do ours have to look like waybills? I started playing with this concept of a story card. The entire shipment is on one single card. You just cross off the line as it happens. Like in this case, we take a stock car to the Bauer Ranch, load up, and send it to the Lynn Junction team track for unloading. Real easy. You've only got one card to deal with here for the entire shipment. And I didn't have to change the database. It just changed the report format, and it came out this way. This, if you count up, has at least 5 different steps, maybe 7, depending on how you want to count a step. 5 steps or more, you can't do on a 4-cycle card. This one you can, and you're able to actively route it to wherever it gets the bedding, actively route it to wherever it gets its clean out. This also fits with icing. So if you want to pre-ice, you can put it in here. If you want to do a top off ice, it will show up here. You just don't get that option with 4-cycle cards. So this is where I'm headed at this point, not even going with the waybills anymore. So in conclusion, I found that going with this database approach gives me unique shipments every time. I don't see the same cars going to the same place every other operating session. It gives me realistic traffic in the sense that operators must think. If they don't drop off a car in the right yard and it shows up in the next yard down the line, well, now what do? Do I go back and fix my database No, I don't have to do that. Just whoever the yard master is has to then, oh, this needs to go back up the line. It handles, as I said, flexibility for layout changes, session changes, gives you the ability to try new options that you've probably not had before. Do you want to throw out all of your car cards just to try out a new idea? Nope, you don't. I've got the ability to go back to any one of those old versions of my waybills to make them work, if I decide I don't like this new idea anymore. And the last one I want to talk about is how easy this program was to do. I had it up and running in 2 hours. I was producing legitimate waybills within 2 hours when I first created this. These waybills, and these are the older style you see here, I think about a week of work in the evenings to get it where I wanted to. And since then, I've kept on playing because, well, I like computers and I like dinking with code and stuff like that. But when I've tried coding this kind of program in Java, in C++, MySQL, and all that, 2 hours would barely get me into even thinking about anything beyond the boilerplate. It just was way too much effort. This was easy. and it gives me the flexibility to make changes as I need it. So, what kind of questions can I answer?
Hey, Richard.
Yes, sir.
I'm not much of an operator, but I spent most of my life in electronic and system simulation, so my questions may be a little weird. Um, I like the idea very much about industry based demand and behavior generating traffic. But how far outside of the layout environment do you actually have to model in terms of the interaction of the industries on your layout with things that they order from and deliver to?
You can make it as realistic as you like.
Well, what do you actually do?
What I have done is, if you noticed on one of the early, let's see if I can get this to go back here. This may take too long to go back. Come on. Come on. There we go. Come on. Oh, pish. Okay. So you'll notice here for the cut stone that this place needs, I said I need a gondola once a week from Portland, wherever they're getting it from, and every other week from San Francisco, wherever they're getting it from. And that's good enough for me. If I wanted to do this, where I'm specifically saying I am getting one carload a month from XYZ quarry in Washington and ABC quarry in Montana, and one carload a week from QRX in South Bay, sure, I could do that. But this is close enough for my needs, my interest. I can make this, I can specify just like some people have done, where I'm getting a load of a boxcar load from someplace far in the east, and I'm assuming that somehow it gets to me.
Do you have
Do
any
I-
industries that are getting their loads from an industry on the layout?
Yeah, I actually am. For one specific is the Noswell King's getting a load of sawdust twice a week from the Lawson sawmill. And you see here, source is
So
lost.
how do you model the interdependence of one industry providing the other?
I look at it from a standpoint of the receiving industry, of the industry that is receiving it.
Okay.
I set this up that Nosmo needs two cars a week, and that's what I did.
And you
And-
assume that the providing industry can deliver whatever the demand is?
Correct. And that's
Okay.
why I was saying, in this case, it needs 3 carloads of cut stone a week. I can get 2 from the north, and I can get 1 from the south.
Okay, so the next question actually ties into this in a weird way. It looks like your notion of time is one day.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yes, yes, it is. I
Okay, but
assume a
the
day.
operators on the layout are being told a car has to stay there for multiple days. Why do they care?
Primarily so that the next time you come in, you don't just automatically take that car off.
But they
Because if
wouldn't, so you're providing more information than the railroad would actually have. And the train operators would actually have. Your reports and things like that car's got to stay there for 3 days. The guy who's dropping off that car doesn't really know that.
Correct. And if you look at it in the stack, you're dropping off the car and you put it at the Larson mill, and that's it. Other than the next thing you do is you pull off the top card and go away.
Right.
Hey, Jeff,
So, yeah.
basically what it has no real purpose for the crew that's delivering the car, but the crew on that job the next day looks at that and goes, oh, this is still waiting. I don't pull this one, X off the,
Yeah, I get all that, but why would you even provide any information like that to the crew currently operating? It would show up when on their orders for the next
it's a
day.
ton of paperwork.
The only paperwork is the waybill, the stack of waybills in the car card. So when you're going to when you're in the town and you see a bunch of cars there, if any of them say loading, you don't bother looking at them any farther. If they don't say loading, it's your responsibility as that train engineer, conductor, to decide, is this one going in the direction I need to take it? And then they take it. But otherwise, it's essentially a blue flag that says, don't touch this car.
Does one day correspond to an op session on your layout?
Yeah.
You know, it'd be interesting if you had the basic time cut to half a day, and you issued new demand orders and in the middle of the job. The crew would have to respond on demand if something was added to the demand or something was taken away from the demand. Just strictly from a simulation standpoint.
Yeah.
For the whole thing. Anyway,
the one other tidbit on that is, I assume a day. There's nothing in it that says this is a day. If you want to say this is a 8-hour trick, you just change the numbers to match in your database, so that instead of a 29% chance of it coming, you divide that by 3. Sorry, that's what? A 10% chance of a car of sawdust coming in. So yeah, you can certainly do that. That's an interesting idea.
the other part of that is that you could actually introduce a chaotic element into it, where delays change, demands change, you know, as I tried to point out. The one last thing is, how do you deal with through trains?
Through trains are just, they run from staging to staging, and their source is north staging or south staging, and their destination is south staging or north staging.
Right,
I put in a
but they're not
block
part of the demand system.
No, well, in a sense they are. If I know that I typically have 5 box cars going south every day, then I put in 5 box cars, a demand for 5 box cars going straight through. Now,
Okay,
could I put more detail in that? Sure, I could, but that's good enough for me at this point.
so do you model both ends of staging as in effect an industry generating demand?
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
And you could turn them into industry, and you could add industries they exist in staging and just have little card boxes lined up at staging for each industry.
Exactly. And you can
that
have
myself,
multiple industries in a given staging, so that if your staging represents Southern Pacific and Western Pacific, well, guess what? You've got 2 tracks, you got 2 boxes.
Hey, thanks, Rich.
Sure. Any other questions I can answer? Thank you very much.
All right,
Jeff?
so we're going to hurry along to Bernard, other than I'm going to say, Larry, I think you need to get a copy of Access, because sounds like what you've been dreaming of for the past year and a half. So can't hear you, you're on mute.
Are you going to teach me to learn Access? The learning curve is steep.
Richard, is the learning curve that steep?
Not is it? If you're comfortable with point and click interfaces, it's not that difficult.
Is it a flat database or a relational database?
Relational.
Yeah, that's where I get hung up.
You don't have to care about it, though. You just have to care about the reports.
Just download the sample from the Model Railroad Hobbyist.
Yeah.
And it's already there for you.
And actually, you don't have to be a running extra subscriber. It's in just the members only. So if you're a signed up, getting email subscriber to Model Railroad Hobbyist, it should be available for you on the forum.
Thank you. I did not know that.
We don't have any way of separating out the running extra customers. And with
Yeah.
that, Bernard, I need to set you up again as a co-host.
Thank you. And I'm not going to unplug my computer this time.
You are now a co-host. Take her away.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Take two. Sorry about the technical difficulties first time. Let me jump right into my presentation and click share. All right. Can you see the presentation? Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about mini prints and what we do today. I'll jump right into the presentation. Let me just move over here. So I make little things. The smaller, the better. And this, I'll share with you today in this presentation a little bit about my journey to become an accidental model railroad manufacturer. And I'm late to the hobby. So I started modeling about 7 years ago. And this is me in Quebec City. I model a Genesee and Wyoming short line called the Quebec Gatineau. And I model it from Quebec City to Montreal. And this is me in Quebec City. This is the layout. It's an HO scale layout that takes up my entire basement. It's basically, the main part of it is in a room, basically 30 feet by 10 feet, and then it winds its way through some other rooms. But this is predominantly the main part of the layout. And I focus on the port of Trois-Rivières. So it's proto-freelance in as much as it's a real railroad, and I've got the industries in relatively the right space. I'm actually struggling with operations. I'd like to start operations. So thanks, Richard, for that presentation. I'm going to take a look at that system because I haven't quite figured out, whether it's going to be car cards or waybills or switch lists or JMRI. So it's built to get to operations eventually, and I'm really interested in your system. I haven't quite wrapped my head around it. This is my first layout, in as much as I built a 4x8 in the basement, and then I added a 6-foot wing, and then I added another 6-foot wing, and then I ripped it all up twice. And so this is the current iteration of my first layout. And this is what it looks like. This is one half of the layout in the basement. It's been about 6-7 years to get to this stage. And my journey to become, an accidental, I'll call it, model railroad manufacturer, really starts with my layout. And it starts, here we go. Oops, there we go. It starts in this portion of the layout right up here. So there's a little creek up here by the speed tunnel. And I wanted to create a little signature scene of a beaver lodge. And, it's a pretty common animal here up in Canada. And it's one of our national symbols. And you can see it on the Canadian Pacific Railway crest. And I could not find an HO scale beaver anywhere. I even Googled HO beaver, which I don't recommend doing unless you have a good backstory to explain it. And I could find them in O scale, but they didn't exist. So I'm a graphic designer. I like to refer to myself as a recovering graphic designer now, because I don't run my design business anymore. And I designed up a beaver, and back then, this was a couple of years ago, well, actually 4 years ago, I sent it off to Shapeways, and 3 weeks later, a fantastically expensive little beaver came in the mail. And I made the mistake, I guess, then of posting it onto Facebook, and a whole bunch of friends wanted it. And lo and behold, the next thing you know, I'm selling little model railroad beavers. Well, everything changed 2 years ago when I got my hands on this. This is a first generation, I guess, Elegoo printer. I now have 7 of them, and better, newer generations. And I really do believe that 3D printing is going to change our hobby in unbelievable ways. Pretty much if you can dream it, you can make it, or someone's probably making it. You know, there's no prototype or scene that is, you know, not possible now to recreate. I know people that have, you know, one-off locomotives that existed in, you know, one time and place, you know, that no model railroad manufacturer would manufacture, that they wanted and designed and have on their layouts. So it really is an interesting time for our hobby. This is one of the printers. I don't know if people are familiar with resin 3D printing, but basically they call it additive manufacturing. And what happens is, this is a sped up version of it, but layer by layer, it basically rises out of the UV photosensitive resin. And there's a light that shines up the bottom of the printer that cures it layer by layer. So it's using a resin that is photosensitive, that's cured by UV light, and you're depositing thin layers, layer by layer, to create this print. The detail, the level of detail that you can get off these printers nowadays is absolutely mind-blowing. And the size, I mean, getting it down to printing things that are, you know, 0.3 millimeters. I don't know what that is in inches, but very small, in other words. And so the one beaver, of course, led to multiple beavers, and these are the 3 different poses. Everything that I offer on my mini prints website is offered in HO scale, S scale, and O scale, and most in N scale. So I have just moved what was for the last 2 years, and will be 2 years old on October 1st. We've just moved, I have just moved, because I am the business right now, from my basement to a commercial space, a 350 square foot commercial space, located about 15-minute walk or 5-minute drive from my home. The wife and kids are thrilled because they have visions of getting their basement back. I'm not sure that I'm prepared to rip out the layout, but certainly another space allows me to build yet another layout. So whether or not the home layout will transition to the space layout, I don't know, but certainly I'm going to have a lot of modules in here. It's a pretty interesting area because I'm right down at the very thin wedge, the bottom of what's called the junction triangle. And I'm sitting in a space right now in an old industrial neighborhood in West End, Toronto. And I'm surrounded on 3 sides by rail lines. To my west, over here on this part, is a commuter rail line. It's called Go Transit. And also our Union Pearson Up Express high-speed airport rail link. To the east of me, and literally beside the building, to the point that it's so close that I'm going to be setting up a mini prints rail cam so that we can live stream it to the website. Probably less than 100 feet from me right now is another Go commuter rail line that literally runs behind the building I'm sitting in. But most excitingly, to the north of me is the CP main line. So the CP main freight line that runs through the city. They all converge in this area here. You can see up in the top corner of the map, and that's why this area is called the Junction. It's an old industrial neighborhood with lots and lots and lots of rail heritage and rail history. And it's going to be fascinating to research it. I really enjoy being in the space because of the rail history. And here you can see a picture of the area in, I believe it's 1923. And if you see that tall building right there, it's one of the first skyscrapers in Toronto. It's called Tower Automotive. And I don't dare do it, but if you were to be able to see out that window right there, you can see it, I think. You can, oh, I guess I have to stop sharing, don't I? Let me, hang on. Stop sharing for 1 second. Okay, can you see out the window there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's the building. So there's the building from that historic photograph. All right, so I will now go back to the presentation. So in addition to the rail history, which is kind of fun, and the fact that this building that I'm sitting in right now, you can see a picture where it's the bottom color picture is the building I'm sitting in, the same building, and you can see the same arrangement of windows. Here it is in 1913, so over 100 years ago, and it was called the Bauden Machine Company. And if you look carefully, so there's Bauden, and then beside Bauden is Telfer Biscuits, and right in front of Telfer Biscuits is a Grand Trunk Railway boxcar. So one of the decisions I have to make is if I do Fremo modules in the space, am I modeling current day rail operations? Am I modeling, back in 1913 freight operations? So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to figure out, what I decide to model in here. But you're not here for the rail history of Toronto. That's a different presentation. What I thought I'd share today briefly is a little bit about the business and some of the things I produce, but I didn't want this to be a paid political advertisement. And if you're interested in mini prints, you can certainly go to miniprints.com and see some of the items. I recognize some customers in the group, so thank you. I know some of you are familiar with mini prints. What I wanted to share is a little presentation that I'm working on. It's very much a work in progress. I think it will end up becoming a clinic or an article or something. But this is sort of the second time that I've shown it. So we'll call it a trial run, and I'm interested in your thoughts. But it's a little presentation called Down the Rabbit Hole. And I like to subtitle it, Why We Do What We Do, because the tagline for mini prints is make your model railroad layout come alive. And that really started me thinking, why do we obsessively super detail a scene? And I find that very interesting because certainly it's a scenery aspect of this hobby that really appeals to me. Operations is something that I'm very much interested in, that I haven't cracked yet. And it's sort of on the plans for the future. But right now I really do like, getting out the static grass gun and, really hyper detailing a scene. And, when my customers send me pictures of their mini prints, which I'll share with you in a moment, the level of detail and quality and what's the word I'm looking for, talent is unreal. And people spend hours and hours super detailing these scenes. So, based on a little, oh, there's the mini prints logo. Based on a little sort of Alice in Wonderland analogy, I thought it might be fun to sort of go down the rabbit hole. I'll be the white rabbit for this analogy, and we'll go to a little Wonderland and try and figure out, why do people spend ridiculous amounts of time and energy, going so deep down the rabbit hole, super detailing these scenes. So here we go, down the rabbit hole. And there you go, Alice, are you going to follow? Whoops, all right. So let's go. And I posted to my Facebook page, which certainly I encourage everyone to go and check out, this question a little while ago. And I started a really interesting discussion on the site, and really based on hundreds and hundreds of comments, was able to distill some of the themes of why we do what we do into some broad, I guess these are the food groups. And really people, do this because a lot of people want their layout to tell a story, and by creating that level of detail, it goes from being just something that is, a train set to a story. And in so doing, that draws you in. By adding these little details, it'll set the layout in a very specific time and place. And that really does make your model railroad more believable and real. When you do that, you create a connection with the person who's viewing your layout. It's also, quite honestly, more challenging. It allows you to let your imagination and creativity loose. It challenges your skill as a modeler. And certainly from my perspective, it makes it more fun. So very briefly, I'd like to look at a few of these. And I will be sort of sharing with you this along with sort of some information about, what people have done. So in terms of telling a story, I think this is a lovely scene using some of our custom cruise figures, and one of our moose. And, something like this, I think it's just, I mean, it makes me laugh, but I mean, there's such a story there. It's wonderful modeling. And I just need to hang on one second. I need to figure out how to get my notes here. So let me just do something for a minute here. See if I can get my notes. No. All right. Let me just go back to play. Slideshow in window. Let me just see if this will work. I'm not getting my notes, unfortunately. All right, that's fine. We'll just share the pictures. All right. Here are some otters that are.
You need to share your screen again, please.
Oh, sorry. Did it bounce out? All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, I have an idea here for a second. Let me try something for a second. Give me 1 second here. Back, here we go. Let me go play. All right, I'll just share the screen here. Okay, you got it?
Yes, sir.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so here are some otters about to steal a fisherman's fish. Where are we here? I love the garden gnomes in the front yard. The dogs, the cats, the little trophy on the wall. These are the little details that really draw you in. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy doing with, the smaller, the better. It's some of the tiny little details, things that, people put inside buildings, I find quite fascinating. A conversation, you just wonder, what are they talking about? Some skateboarders, running down the street. Things like that can also set the layout in a very specific time and place. What era is it? I model modern day freight operations. So that's one of the reasons why, I wanted to create these modern custom crews. I've found a lot of, figures from the 50s and 60s, but I didn't see anyone making, model railroad figures that would be applicable to my layout in time and space. So I think, these little details can really help anchor it in a geography or a time period. Whether it be a maritime geography or, Midwest. I just came out with a whole line of cacti. So, these are the little details I think that are fun to add. Your mountain goats. These are little details I think that make things more believable and real. I mean, one of the things is the real world is filled with clutter. There's lots of junk and, there are birds in the real world, but so rarely do we see them on our layouts. So it's one of the things that I really wanted to focus in on. Create a ton of birds, but I mean, it's interesting because I find that when I model, I make everything so clean and orderly. But when you look at a photograph of the real world, it's very rarely, as clean and orderly as the layout looks. So all these little details, I think, just make everything more believable. I love this, someone's modeling an old, rusty, broken down, abandoned caboose, and they threw some squirrels on top of it. I think that just adds a level of detail and realism that's really fun. Or, a little raven or a crow, on the edge of a building. Someone sent me a picture, I don't have it in the presentation, but they used some pigeons and they actually splattered white paint underneath where the pigeons were sitting. And that level of detail just really brought the scene to life. I mean, these are the things I like, that create the connection with the viewer. It's no longer just, the Christmas tree train, running around the tree. It becomes very real. I've got a dog pooping because why not? It's kind of fun. I metal detect, so I had to create a metal detectorist. I don't know what he's looking for, but trackside, I have a suspicion what he might find. Tiny little things like crabs. I created these microscopic crabs, and then Richard sent me these pictures where he actually had put them in boxes. And I mean, these things are microscopic. These are the types of things I think that, really, let the imagination and creativity loose. And I think it's a lot of fun to do that. Whether it's, recreating a CSI scene, or the graveyard, or of course, that typical 1970s Bigfoot scene. An HO modeler asked for some O-scale lobsters, and I wasn't quite sure what he was going to do with them. And then he created this wonderful scene, this wonderful sign. So I thought that was a really fun use of little minis. And, the number of modelers and the skill involved. I mean, I've seen people, just super detail the inside of a building, that would never be seen. I mean, you look through windows to see some of the details. One of the things I created for Christmas was the leg lamp from A Christmas Story. And it's really fun just to start, hiding little details like that inside buildings. I know when I go to layouts, sometimes, I'll squint down and look through a window and be surprised what's inside. Eagles' nests, and all this stuff, to my mind, just really make the whole model railroad journey more fun. Yes, I'm serious about my modeling sometimes, but I also do it for fun. And if you haven't seen Poor Frank, there's a wonderful, you can, I think there's a YouTube channel and there's a Facebook page. But Poor Frank was created by Dustin Pendergast, and he lives on Vancouver Island in British Columbia. And I sent him, he was one of my very first customers 2 years ago. And I think every single animal that Mini Prints has ever created pretty much has appeared in this Poor Frank character's life. And Poor Frank is constantly being taunted, attacked, maligned, abused, mauled by all of these little mini print characters. He's been chased by the Headless Horseman. He's been mauled by a bear, and he's been cornered by skunks. So if you're looking for a good model railroad humor site with some pretty excellent modeling, check out Poor Frank, because I think there's, for my money, there's no one who has more fun with a very good, very well done layout than Dustin. So those are a few of the sort of the reasons in the beginning of an exploration as to, why on heaven's name, do people, buy these crazy little things I produce and what they do with them, and some of the fun that we've had. Since sort of talking about this presentation, there are two more points that came up that people made, and I'm certainly very interested in your thoughts as well. But I think two things that people mentioned to me recently that have become really an interesting inspiration for me are the themes of recreating memories of a very specific time and place. And I certainly see that in a lot of the requests I get. Can you make the such and such, that I remember from my youth? And another point that someone brought up, which I thought was really interesting, was a lot of the times the things that we put on our layouts are to honor someone. So it might very well be that, one of these super detailed scenes that you're creating, is because, your Aunt Eleanor, you remember a very specific time, and, someone who's not with you, you want to sort of name something after them and create that sense of them. So I thought those were really interesting observations. What's new at Mini Prints? Lots. I try and come up with a couple new things and post them every week. Lately, I have been really trying to catch up. I've got because of the move, I lost a couple weeks. So I'm about 80 orders behind. So I'm sort of sitting here with, let me see, well, I won't stop sharing, but there's a large pile of orders beside me. So if you have ordered, I'm at about 16 days out right now. So I'm working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and weekends because I want to clear up that backlog as quickly as possible. I like to sort of get things out within 4 or 5 days, and we're up to about 2 weeks plus. So I haven't brought anything out in the last week or two, but there's lots on the drawing board. There's some amazing things that I've designed and will list as soon as I get caught up. But some of the most recent things, the railway baggage cart, I mentioned the cacti. I came up with some cook figures to put in your dining cars. People always have passengers sitting at the table, but someone requested the actual staff so that you can look through the windows and see the cooks cooking. The railway lanterns aren't new, but they continue to do very well. And it's the little railroad details that I'm focusing in on. I think that are a lot of fun and really interesting. So I can't promise that I will get to all the requests as quickly as I would like, but certainly if there is something that you would like to see for your layout, a small detail that sort of fits with the vibe of the types of things that we do, I'd be very interested to hear from you. We do have a website. If you haven't been there, it's miniprints.com or .ca. They both go to the exact same place. And I can pop that website up in a minute once I stop sharing, if that's of interest. We can look at a few things if we have a moment. Most of the new items go up on the Facebook page or the Instagram page. So if you're interested in seeing, what's new, or, you want to sort of get in touch, both Mini Prints Facebook, which is facebook.com/miniprints3D, or the Instagram, the same thing, instagram.com/miniprints3D, are both really good ways to keep in touch. And I wanted to mention that as an NMRA member, all NMRA members get 15% off all mini prints. And it's part of the NMRA partnership program, which interestingly, I find a lot of people don't know about or have forgotten about or haven't logged on to lately. So if you are an NMRA member and you know your member login and you're able to get in on the website, there is a partnership page, and I'm actually going to stop sharing for a minute. I'll show it to you live. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. And I'm going to share something different. But this is something that I find that a lot of people aren't particularly familiar with. So let me just go to nmra.org. I'm going to log in, but I'm going to do it now so you don't see. Okay, member home. Okay, so let me just share the screen. Members only, I think this is it. Okay, can you see the NMRA website? Okay, great, thanks, Jeff, appreciate it. So yeah, if you actually log in and go under here under benefits to the partnership program, this gives you a list of all of the companies with all the codes. And since we are actually recording it, I won't actually flash any of the codes just in case this goes up somewhere where non-NMRA members see it. But there are about 30, 40 different companies there, all giving codes. And it's just great. You'll get a mini prints code as well if you log in and grab it. So let me just share something different here. Go to, just go look at chat for a minute. Has anybody thrown anything in chat that I should know about? No, okay. I'll just go to the mini prints website and then we can open it up for comments, questions, conversation. I'm going to stop sharing that and start sharing this. Okay, so that's the mini prints website. Is it being, hang on, let's hit share. There we go. Now you can see it, hopefully. All right. So I'll show you some of the latest stuff. Just let's go view here. I wish there was a way of seeing everything, but there isn't. Okay. So lots of different categories, birds, animals, land and aquatic, domestic, people. I think one of my favorite areas are the oddities, objects and vehicles. So I like things that are kind of fun, strange, and different. I'm sure many of you are aware that we're doing some 3D body scans. So I 3D scanned Lionel of the AML Nation, and that was a fundraiser that we did to raise over $2,000 for his cancer charities. We donated all the time and modeling and resin and production and everything. You know, gargoyles, ghosts, you know, lots of fun things. Sasquatch is a big seller. You can see kind of the level of fine detail, you know, that we're able to create, you know, with these little skeletons. You know, you can see it there beside a pen. Now, these things are really quite small. In terms of new things, I'm starting to play around with things that are lit. So I'm having a lot of fun doing, you know, flickering fire LEDs. So this is a little HO scale potbelly stove that I threw. So I printed some fire in clear resin and then inserted a flickering LED. So it's really quite, it's incredibly realistic looking. It's really a lot of fun. So of course, then I had to put it into a fire barrel. You know, and so I'm trying to think of, you know, all sorts of different things I can put flickering fire in. So if anyone has any fire requests, I seem to be on a flickering fire kick. So we did the burn barrel, we did the stove. I've got a few other little flickering things, you know, created a little special mini print for Valentine's Day. You know, always looking for sort of fun things. Objects is a growing area, you know, whether it's, you know, little fish mounts. This is, you know, a lot of fun. I mean, man, these things are small, you know. You're literally printing little Billy Basses that you can put inside, you know, people's, you know, houses or on top of cabins. I tend to really really enjoy, you know, the smaller the better. It's just a bit of a fun challenge for me to get to the miniest mini print. I like things that are quirky, different, fun. You know, this was a fun one. This is something that I've always wanted to do. So I wanted to, it's a static, it doesn't actually move, but it's just sort of a static design element, you know, put together a rail bike. So you could create, you know, maybe an abandoned rail line. And then just have a scene, you know, where some people are out rail fanning on their rail bikes. I think that gives sort of a general flavor for the types of things, you know, that we're doing. The new items are always listed here under new arrivals. Our best sellers still tend to be, you know, our custom crew figures, which are the ones I mentioned before. We started off with Custom Cruise 1, which was this prototypical conductor figure, and that led to Custom Cruise 2, 3, 4, and 5. Custom Cruise 5, our newest one, I think, where did I just go to people here? Here we go, people. Custom Cruise 5 is something that I'd never seen done before. And it's really something I wanted for my layout. And most of these are things that I want for my own layout or things that people have requested. This is a crew change. So I wanted to model very specifically the time where, one locomotive crew was engaging, with another locomotive crew. So let me just go back here. So this is that moment, where, one team's briefing another team. So that's kind of fun. Oops, I should go to American pricing. There we go. So you can buy everything in the site in US or Canadian dollars. So let me stop sharing there. I could probably drone on till the cows come home, but does anyone have any sort of thoughts, questions, either about, why we obsessively model what we model, or questions about 3D printing, or just mini prints in general?
Hey, Bernard,
Yes.
you're very receptive to the suggestions. You made the HO scale puffins for me.
Oh, excellent. Yes. Hi, Ross. Yes.
Hi. And then that kind of ties into your other remark about recreating a moment in history,
Yes.
because that goes clear back to when my brother-in-law and sister-in-law were visiting from out of state, and way back when Keiko, the killer whale, was down at the Oregon coast.
Oh,
And
yes.
so we went down to see Keiko, and one of the displays was the puffin displays. And my sister-in-law got such a big kick out of the puffins that kind of became, that's when the puffins became a thing in our family. So I did send a picture to Jeff. I don't know whether I can share it later, but I've got them all painted up, and they're all at home on the sea cliff on the layout. So as
You
people
just
come
shared it.
in,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, as
They look
people come
amazing.
in, yeah, they come in and they look at that, and they just stop, and they get up as close as they can to try to see, is that really? Because the things are tiny, but
Yeah.
excellent quality, excellent service. Thank you very much, and the sky's the limit. You've got all kinds of stuff yet to do. So
Well, thank you for challenging me. Those were a lot of fun to paint. It's I really do enjoy the painting part too. And I should mention that it's one of the questions I get is, how do you treat them? How do you paint them? So I've got a painting clinic up on the website. So at the bottom of the website, I did an NMRAX painting clinic. So if anyone is, and I know, you did a fantastic job, but I know some people are intimidated by painting them. And, it's just, you get in there with an Optivisor and a small brush, and you have fun.
Yep. And Trolls Kirk, he had on his DVD something about you put your hands together.
Yes.
You hold it, and then the paintbrush, and if you have your hands tied together, they shake in unison. And so that was one of his tips.
Excellent. Well, you did a great job. I love the picture. Jeff, can you show it again? Oh, here we go. Screen sharing. Yeah. Oh, those look great. Oh, those are fantastic. I like your rock work too.
Oh, thank you.
Great cliff face. Actually, will you send me that picture?
Certainly.
Ross? Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
Because I do like, if people do have mini prints on their layout and they send me pictures, I'll always post them on the Facebook page with, of course, credit and tag you, because that's the fun part. I mean, I can sit here surrounded by smelly, somewhat toxic resin, squinting at these things, but it's the fun part is seeing what people do with them. So thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
Really appreciate it.
Bernard, I have a particular request for a class of figure.
Okay.
I cannot find any more than maybe one or two workers that are timeless. And by that, I mean figures with dungarees, work boots, t-shirts, or just normal shirts, no hats, no helmets, no radios, no nothing. And in poses that, actually I got requests for two different poses. One is, assume that the figure is still, right? Because a lot of times when you put like a walking figure into a scene, it doesn't look right, no matter what you do.
Sure.
But if you have a figure leaning up against the wall, or you have a figure hanging on to a ladder or something like that, they look great, and you don't have to work really hard to get them into a scene. But I can't find them, particularly when all I'm looking for is a figure of dungarees and t-shirts, like
Sure.
laborers in a factory, on a dock, on a boat. I can't find them.
Sure.
So that class of figure, I'd love for you to see you do. And the second one is I'd love for you to do HO action figures. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. I don't mean have any figure that moves, and I don't mean to have any figure that is running or the thing that I said to avoid, but figures that have, instead of a particular form, they've got a set of 6 different arms that I can apply to the side of them. So that when you make them, you make a torso and legs and a set of arms that could be applied, or a set of heads that could be applied. And maybe some of those heads have hats and some don't. But figures that I can put together in different ways to get to accomplish the scene that I'd like to accomplish. The other thing is that they are generally, they look normal. They're not 7 feet tall. They
Okay.
don't weigh 500 pounds. They don't have hairy arms, but they generally just look formal, informal, and will work into any scene.
Yeah.
It seems like every figure manufacturer has got to deal with the oddity and not the common. I'm looking for the common, and I'd like to be able to work them into lots of different poses and scenes.
Sure.
So those are my 2 classes of requests.
A couple things with regards to the common figures. That's really doable. And what I would say for poses is I work from photographic references. So the best thing to do, if you have a very specific, prototypical figure that you'd like or a pose that you'd like, email me, bernard@miniprints.com. It's on the website, or I've got a slide at the end of the presentation, or just, it's easy, bernard@miniprints.com. And send me photographic references. It can just be, a quick, you don't have to own the photo. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just a quick Google search, I want something like this or a pose like this. It's a lot easier to sort of get a sense of what you mean, when I have a visual reference. With regards to capturing things that are sort of more real, that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about scanning. And if you go back and look at the latest burn barrel I did, that figure was actually scanned here in my space, miniature printerland, as I'm calling it. So I'll be doing more life scans. It's been a bit of a challenge up until now with A, being in my house, and B, obviously the restrictions we've had. But as things open up, and now that I have a commercial space, it'll be easier to do casting calls and have people come in. And certainly if anyone's planning on visiting Toronto, I didn't mention that, well, in addition to being surrounded by 3 rail lines, we also have one of the best breweries in the city across the street. So I'm surrounded by beer and trains. And I'm hoping that I'll start to do a lot of sort of scanning in here, so that, we'll get, I'll do casting calls, and we'll have dress up days, and people will come in and, scan them. And I think that'll be a really good source of realistic looking poses and people, like the one I just mentioned on the burn barrel, which was scanned. Excuse me. So yeah, that's all doable. I can't promise when, as I say, because time is, scarce at this point, but definitely it's something I'm planning to do. Figures seem to be the highest growth area. People want good quality figures. And all the figures I do are scaled properly. I'd be lost without my, scale ruler. I don't do 7-foot figures unless it's the Sasquatch. So yeah, send me an email. Thank you.
Beer and railroads, how do you get anything done?
I have a pile of, did I mention the backlog of orders?
Beer and railroads, how do you get anything done? Can you do more in N scale? please?
It's funny. Well, I was going to
Especially
say, I know that Jeff doesn't model an N scale, but when he started mentioning those detachable figures, I thought, oh God, please don't ask for detachable posable figures in N scale.
I would like the ones in the normal poses like he described. Those would be perfect for a
Most-
1930s, 20s layout.
Most figures that I produce, pretty much every figure that I produce is available in N scale. Now, N scale, there are some things that just physically will not reproduce. I mean, even with the equipment I've got. But if I'm going to share screen again for a minute here, forgive me, I'm just going to click here because this is something maybe I need to make it a little bit more obvious, but at the bottom of the Mini Prints website, so I'm going to go to home here. At the very bottom of the Mini Prints website, so you can see there are these things, subscriptions, N scale gallery, there's a painting clinic. If you click N scale gallery, it's a one-stop easy selection of everything that we produce in N scale. Now, most of the time you can go find the thing you want and there's just a pull down menu for the scales. But if you want a one-page visibility, everything on this page is available in N scale. These are all the figures that are included. If there is a figure that you see on the website that is not available in N scale, it means either it's not technically possible to produce without me going insane, or I just haven't tried yet. And the machines are always getting better. So there were some figures that didn't work a year ago, but since I've received new machines, will work now. So if there is something specific that you don't see here that you want that is on the site, just let me know, just email me.
Okay, thank you.
But there is quite a bit. I would say the vast majority of things available on the site are available in N scale, or certainly everything that people have asked, I've tried to do. All right, I will stop sharing.
I have another question. Automobiles in the
Yes.
early 1900s. Most of them that you see in the catalogs and things are generally 1938 or 40s or 50s, but not too many in the early 1900s where you have the old Model Ts and the old trucks, maybe the Diamond T trucks and things like that. There are kits available, which Jordan I just produces them, and also Wheelworks does them, but they're in kits. But I was looking for, every time I see a sale or so on vehicles, I always look to see if there's anything back in the 1920s time frame. And you just don't see them. So I don't know if, I know you have a vehicle section. I just kind of went through with it on my other computer here, and I don't see any old time cars in there. Are you getting requests for those or not?
Sometimes, but I've stayed away from automobiles for a couple of reasons. Certainly, most of the time I get requests for modern vehicles, and I've stayed away from those for licensing issues. I don't really want to be sued by Ford or General Motors or, or anyone. So I know that typically, car companies, you do have to do licensing deals for most of them. The other issue is that there are a lot of people producing cars, and what I'm trying to do with Mini Prints is sort of produce things that other people haven't done. Having said that, if there is something that's old enough that copyright's not an issue or there's demand for, I would certainly look at it, but everything has to go through the lens, am I going to sell enough of them to justify the development cost? So there was a very specific tractor that someone wanted, and he said, I need 30 of them. So I'm like, okay, for 30 of them, it's worth it. I know some other people probably want it. He's taking 30, that amortizes the design cost. I could look into it. If I'd have to first really check that they aren't commercially available, because what I don't necessarily want to do is recreate what's already out there. And it drives me crazy. I mean, I'm not going to vent, but there are a few designs I've done that I won't call them competitors. I'll say other people have immediately copied. And it drives me nuts because I think there's enough variation out there that I don't want us all to be falling over each other, just creating the same things over and over again. And it's really important to me not to, not to just sort of like, fall over what other people are doing. So if they truly aren't out there, if there's a void in the market, if licensing is not an issue, and if the demand is there, then absolutely 100%, it's something I want to do.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So, I mean, the other thing too is send me the, the request, Bernard@miniprints.com. Technically it is probably very doable. I mean, I've done other things, like these tractors and things that are quite complex, and I'm not concerned about the technical ability. They are a bit of a pain to print. Vehicles tend to need a lot of supports, and supports need a lot of, physical, like this is a pure labor business. So there's a lot of physical labor involved in printing it and then cutting it, and sort of, it's more an artistic process than a manufacturing process. But yeah, for sure. If there's a demand for it, absolutely. And I'd love to see what you have in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other thoughts? All right, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some of the insane little tiny things I'm working on, and some not so tiny. Here, I'll show you one thing, just a sec. So I mentioned I like small things, but this is, someone requested an O scale. So this is a little O scale S2 speeder, which I spent about half an hour snipping and then broke. So I'm printing a new one now. It's a bit of a pain because it takes about 4 hours to print. So, so if there are bigger items, sometimes they're easier to produce, sometimes they're more difficult to produce, but N, H, O, S, or O scale, the weirder, the better. Send me what you need.
Can you do that speeder and N scale?
I have, yes, hang on. Yeah, we've done it in N scale.
Okay, I'll go check the website. Thank you.
I'll show it to you. Hang on, it's setting. Let me find it.
I
I've
can
got
use a
all my.
couple.
What's that?
I can use a couple.
Yeah, it's actually really fun in N scale. It worked really well. It also comes with 2 figures, and believe it or not, let me just look at this whole sitting. Here we go. Where is the N scale speeder? Do I have one in N scale here? Yeah, I think, no, that's the HO scale one, but I do have it in N scale, and it even comes with N scale people sitting inside it. It's really fun. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Do all of your figurines and that come all clipped and
They do.
painted that
Yeah.
way?
Yeah,
Do
they do.
you deliver them with all of the, like that, in that version?
No, I snip them, and it's part of the reason. I mean, sometimes people say, oh, your stuff is quote unquote expensive. And it's a very manual process. So when it comes off the printer, it prints like this.
Right.
And when it comes off the printer, it's got all these little supports.
Right.
And all of those have to be clipped off. And I've been doing this for 2 years. And this is a big one, and I just screwed it up.
Yeah.
So it's not easy. This takes about half an hour to free from the bonds that hold it. But
you don't sell any that a customer can do his own snipping and own painting?
Because you know what the problem is? The problem is I don't, because you're going to wreck it. There's a muscle memory involved, okay. And I don't want you to spend, $10, $20, whatever it is, wait 2 or 3 weeks, get it in the mail, get all excited, start snipping it, and then have it break.
Yeah,
that's not fun. The other thing too is part of the process in this is after these things are printed. What are you showing us, Jeff? Are you on mute? Oh, I can't hear Jeff.
Jeff is showing something.
He's showing something. Oh, I think he's showing how they come. Those are ones that I clipped.
Okay,
Yeah, I think he must be on mute because I can't hear him. I want people to have a good experience with these. So I do the clipping partially because I don't want you to have to, you know, to break them.
don't mess it up.
It's quite frustrating. But the other thing too is the last step in the process after I clip them is I put them under a UV light and I cure them. And the curing basically just stops the resin. It hardens the resin. And if I cured them under the UV light and then you snip them, it would shatter. And if I didn't cure them and you snip them, you'd then need to go get a UV light or put them out in the sun. You know, they wouldn't be fully finished. So I do the finishing and send them out the door. And while it is time consuming, it kind of fits with my sort of perfectionism because I want it to go out the door, you know, as perfect as I can make it. And so that's on me to sort of make it, you know, ready for you. You need to do the painting, but I don't want you to have to suffer the way I do.
Yeah, understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I had my microphone switched off, but what you can kind of see in front of me is a moose head, a squirrel, a couple of chairs, Adirondack types or rockers, I can't be sure which, and I think a deer head. And that's exactly how they come. And the details, the antlers are ridiculously lacy. I don't know how you do that.
It's
That hurts.
amazing. The technology is really at the point, I mean, where what you can print is it's mind blowing. I mean, there are things that people have said, can you do it in N scale? And I said, hell no. And they said, try, and it worked. So, you know, it's most of this is just time. It's a time business where you just have to put in, you know, the hours and be patient, and you print it and it fails, and you print it and you try it again. And, you know, it's a very iterative process, but the technology is there. If you're prepared to put in, you know, the time and have the patience, it's amazing what the results can be. It really is. I think it's going to change the hobby in unbelievable ways. I think I started in desktop publishing 30 plus years ago, you know, and back then I was the only kid on the block with a Macintosh computer. And now, you know, there are sites where you can basically, you know, like Canva or whatever, you can design a newsletter in one click. You know, the desktop publishing revolution was really the first time that it put expensive printing technology into the hands of everyone, and we could all become publishers. I think this is, we're witnessing the desktop manufacturing revolution, you know, where we're all basically going to be able to become, you know, desktop manufacturers, and, you know, and start making things, you know, things that, you know, 5 or 10 years ago, you needed hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. And we can now create one-offs for our layout. It's amazing. I mean, I'm just wondering what it's going to be like 10 years from now.
Indeed. Tougher resins, I hope.
Less toxic resins, I hope.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know there's water soluble ones out there now or something, water cleanups.
Yeah, I have not heard good reviews of them from some of the people that have used them, although I have not used them myself. I'm not sure the resin is any less toxic. I think you just use, you know, water instead of isopropyl alcohol. But
Have you had to replace any of your LCDs yet?
yes, but it's funny because I had 3 first generation, I use all Elegoo resin printers. I had 3 first generation Elegoo printers. I bought the screen replacements for all 3 of them. They're only about 35 bucks a pop. I replaced one of them and then immediately decided that the Elegoo Mars, I skipped a generation, and I wanted the Elegoo Mars 2 Pro. So basically, I ended up replacing my screens by replacing my machines. So I bought a whole bunch of new Mars 2 Pros, and they're wickedly fast. They're double the speed. I mean, I'm getting better resolution, but I think for me, the issue really is print time. You know, when I snip something in you know, I would need to put it back on the machine. I don't want it to take 5 hours. You know, 2.5 hours is better than 5 hours right now.
Indeed.
let me see, I'll see if, oh yeah, there are two things coming that I'll show you if you want to see what's, or here's one thing that's coming that's kind of fun. So this is something, I've got a number of projects that I'm bringing out. This is one. There are other 40-foot lobster boats out there, no doubt. It's not an original design. However, I don't think some of them are particularly good. I mean, this one was really done from blueprints. So I wanted one that was a little bit more prototypical. But in addition, I also make lobsters that are really small, lobster traps, and fisherman figures. So I don't know of anyone who's offering in a package the main lobster boat, the fisherman, the lobsters, the lobster traps, all in a sort of a one thing. So that's one thing I'm working on, which is kind of fun. Another thing I'm working on is CP, so Canadian prototypical vans, as we call them up here. I'm working with a really talented 3D modeler named Dave Bedard, who's come up with some incredible designs, and I'll be printing and selling some of his early wooden Canadian cabooses. And I'm also doing some work. Rapido is coming out with a line of really cool police cars, sort of 70s and 80s Impala police cars. And I've come up with a whole line of figures that go with their police cars that are perps and police. So, you know, a couple of guys spread eagled on the back of the car, you know, really sort of Rockford Files, Kojak, you know, 1970s and 80s type figures, you know, for that bus scene. And that'll be fun because it'll be sold. It'll be the first time I've actually worked specifically with, well, a manufacturer, but also a retailer. So they're being, everything I've done up until now has been on my own website, but I'll sell these through a company called Otter Valley, which is a Canadian mail order. They're kind of like a Spring Creek or a, who else is, you know, they're like a retail store or like a family run retail store that does mail order that's really big up here. So I'll sell these Rapido police car add-on figures through them. So lots on the go. It's literally just an issue of time. I have hired my first part-time employee. He's actually the gentleman that I 3D scanned who's warming his hands at the burn barrel. So I've got about 24 hours a week, someone coming in to help, and lots of projects on the go. Really, it's unlimited, the number of potential different, you know, projects, you know, that people are asking for and, you know, that we can create. It's a fun time to be knee deep in resin.
Ick.
Yeah, very ick.
How long do you think you can last with all the beer fumes and resin fumes going along?
I have 2 industrial HEPA filters in here, and whenever I'm printing, I have the windows open. And I'm probably going to put in, I don't have a vent hood right now, but I have, the space I got has a connection. So
Okay.
I will probably, I'm debating whether or not I need to put a vent hood on top of the printers. But it's funny. I mean, it's not particularly bad if you have, you know, the fans going and the window open. But I suspect that at some point, you know, I might look at, you know, getting a bit more industrial on the venting. But I haven't developed any nervous twitches or strange affectations yet. It's been 2 years, so I don't glow in the dark yet.
No superpowers noted, huh?
Well, that's debatable.
Printing beavers and N scale, that's a superpower.
Yeah, you can get those. I'm trying to think what my smallest N scale. I think the sandhill cranes in N scale might be, the legs on those cranes in N scale
Oh.
are ridiculously thin. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So no, that was fun. Thank you for the opportunity to share. And I definitely, I can't promise everything will get made, but if you do have something that you're yearning for, let me know. And please send photos.
I'm still hoping for one of those inflatable swimming pools.
Oh, for sure. That is on the list. It's funny. I was thinking about that. And there are a few things that I have got in the request list. The issue simply becomes, when do I list them? Do I put the swimming pool out in the dead of winter, or do I save that for, a May, June, July offering?
True enough.
Yeah. I have a really good idea how to do the water too for that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's I saw someone do something quite clever, and I might ask I'll ask them first if they don't mind if I appropriate their water idea, but it was a really interesting way of putting water into the swimming pool. And that's one of the things too that I'd like to do, like the boat I showed you, is start to sell things that are more, I won't call them kits because there won't necessarily be assembly required, but that are more kit-like in terms of being groupings of things as opposed to one-offs. So I have a few ideas of things that'll, there'll be multiple components that go together. I'm not sure you'll actually be sort of gluing walls and things together, but I'd like to bring out sort of that type of product.
Selling scenes instead of pieces.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'd rather do a scene for $30 than a figure for $10 type thing.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Can you print in resin in clear?
Yes. And as a matter of fact, I have, here, I'll show you.
The Adlake lamps are clear, aren't they?
The Adlake, yep, the lamps are clear. So the lanterns are clear. Here, let me grab these. But these, I don't know, it's going to be hard to see. But these are the flames. And I've done them in 8mm, 6mm, 7, 5, 4. I've done various sizes of them. But it's the clear resin flames that I then put the flickering LED in and then insert into stove or barrel or whatever. The clear resin worked really well for the lanterns because, and I can go to the website better, but the beauty of the clear resin, and you're never going to see that, but the beauty of the clear resin is that when you're painting the lanterns, you just paint the parts that are metal, silver, or whatever, and then you leave the clear bits clear. So you basically, it's a very realistic looking lantern because you're basically starting off with a clear print and just painting out what you don't want to be clear.
Yeah, I want to put an LED in those.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that too. It would work for O scale. The HO scale ones are, it's funny because it's technically doable. I can like drill a hole. I mean, I'm using the Pico LEDs. So the LED will fit and I can create the hole, but they're so fine. I definitely can get it to work in O scale. I'm not sure whether the HO scale will hold an LED.
I'll show you how to do it.
All right. All right.
This is something Jeff is a downright expert at.
I know Jeff's work very well. I have been a fan and a follower for many years.
Can you print those with a hole in the middle?
Oh, absolutely.
All the way up from the base?
Yep.
Okay, then it's doable. What you do is you use 38 gauge wire and you'll route it up along the sides and then to the handle, to the hand that'll hold it.
Yep.
Or if you don't want it to be handled literally, you could just put it up from the bottom and you can actually get an 0201 wired LED that'll fit without, actually there's probably 2 LEDs that'll fit, but it's doable. Oh,
Okay.
The reason I was talking about wiring, routing the wire up around the handle and the sides is because once painted, the wire disappears.
Yes. I'm looking for things to do with these flickering LEDs, and I have something coming out that will be insanely great. That's never been done before, that I will not say because I really am getting a little peeved off at certain manufacturers who seem to come out with things a week after I do. So I want to keep this one close to my vest, but within the next couple of weeks, check out the website, because there's going to be a new thing with a flickering LED that I've certainly never seen done before, that I think is going to be kind of cool and really popular.
Have you looked into doing a forge?
No, I have not done a forge yet. That's a great idea. I've stayed away from the old sort of welder just because, you know, there's so many welders out there. But
There's a lot of welders.
yeah, but a forge is a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was Googling the other day, things that flicker. 'Cause-
Well, you can always do fireflies.
yeah, exactly.
In N scale, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard. But yeah, the clear resin is really, it's really fun to do things in clear resin. The other thing I was going to do in clear resin I haven't done yet are icicles, but I mean, not that many people model winter scenes, but I thought icicles would be kind of cool for those who do.
I assume rows of icicles.
Yeah, exactly. Single N scale icicles to be applied individually by Richard.
I'm insane, but I'm not stupid.
So yeah, if anyone has any ideas of what to do with clear resin, yeah, it's a lot of fun to print.
Glass blower.
Oh, I've done bottles, lots of bottles. So I've got 99 beer bottles, and I've done beer bottles, I've done liquor bottles.
I mean the actual glass blower figure with his flickering furnace thing.
That would be good. It's all doable. It's just, as I say, it's just time and will it sell?
Right.
I need a 3-foot tall Moxie bottle and 3 foot in N scale. A blown up Moxie bottle. That just I might be coming and talking to you.
All right.
What's a Moxie bottle?
I don't know.
Moxie, it's a soda pop from the turn of the last century. Moxie soda.
So Robert would be interested in it too.
Yeah,
All right.
got two sales right here.
I do like the Model T idea, or the early cars, because I do think those would sell. I just have a feeling I've seen them somewhere, but I just want to sort of, double check.
Well, as I said, they come out in kits, and Wheelworks in Jordan Valley, I think it's Jordan Valley, has them, but they need your type of talent to assemble them. They're so darn small, and the parts are just almost impossible to handle. And with my big fat fingers, usually you're assembling with tweezers.
Yeah, no, I'm amazed. I mean, they're for things like tractors and cars and vehicles, if they're well supported, 3D printing does seem to be, a really good way of producing these vehicles. It's just, time consuming. It's not a process where you can just, chunk out 1 million of them. I was going to investigate making molds and then pouring resin into molds, but I think I'll lose a lot of the fine detail that I really like in the 3D printing. So I'm not sure. I'm still trying to figure out faster ways of getting out quality products. And I think there is a trade-off. I think that you can have sort of a beautiful one-off little artistic piece that is very time consuming, or you can go the mass production route and you're going to lose some of that, that detail that the 3D printer can produce.
One problem with the early cars and trucks is they tend to have struts and things that are very delicate. That would be, I think, hard to 3D print. But Jordan Highway Miniatures is a vacuum that Berkshire Valley and a couple other companies are beginning to fill, but it's still a huge vacuum in the hobby.
Yeah, Mr. Jordan, I assume that was his name, passed away a year or two ago. And Apparently his will stated, destroy them all.
What a loss to the hobby.
Holy cow.
Oh dear.
I understand they haven't been destroyed yet, but yeah, that was the instructions he left.
That's,
Oh dear.
that sounds like he was senile at the time he did it.
Well, on the plus side, if that does happen, then there's no copyright issues and there's a hole in the market. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah, I do want to try very hard not to just recreate, what exists out there. Now, obviously, there are going to be certain things like I'm not the first person to do a burn barrel or a flickering burn barrel. There's going to be some crossover, and I can justify that if people, come to me and ask me, please create this for me. That's fine. But there's enough stuff out there that I'm going to try anyway to either do things that are original or my own unique take on things, or do things better if I think I can do them better. That's sort of what I'm going for. I'm not there 100% on everything, but that's where I want to try and be.
Can't wait to see what that little box has for me in a few weeks. Hey, did you get the subscriptions out yet this month?
They are out. Well, actually, good point. So they're all out. Let's see. I have 10 left here that I'm actually waiting for the flickering. I ran out of the flickering LEDs. So I have an order of the flickering LEDs coming in on Thursday. So there are 10 boxes. And I think I probably took the 10 out that were either the closest to me or the most understanding. And I'll communicate with people if they haven't gone out yet. So the vast majority of them went out on the 15th. So I try and get the mini prints of the month club, which I do on the 15th of every month. There are 10 that have not gone out yet and that will go out next week because I'm waiting for a refresh. And I might have just given it away, but the flickering barrel is in the mini prints. And no, sorry, it's a flickering potbelly stove that's in the mini prints of the month club this month.
Have to figure out what to do with that one.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, the good news is, sorry, Jeff, you get the flame and the flickering LED, and the potbelly is 3 pieces. So if you don't want to put the flickering flame in the potbelly, you could create a campfire or put it in something else.
Actually, I have a place I could do that.
There you go. Flexibility. What Jeff's talking about is I do a mini print of the month club every month, and it's $25 US per month. And I pick what goes in it, and typically it tends to be the newer stuff, or the stuff I'm pre-releasing. So it's kind of a first look, or they're the guinea pigs, but in a good way, in as much as they get all the good stuff. And what I try and do is I try and make it $50 retail value for $25. So I try and it's not always exactly that. It is, sorry, Richard, HO scale only.
I noticed.
Yeah, it's so time consuming. It was meant to be, very production line, so very time efficient. It's turned into its own beast, as everything takes time, but it's fun. And it's a very loyal fan base. And every month they get sent out a package, and it's what I want to send out, but it tends to be a good value. And I'm amazed that people seem to be very loyal and everybody renews. So people seem to be liking it.
It's my humble brag to have been subscriber number 1.
You are. Yeah, you are absolutely number 1. And hold on, let me see if yours has gone out. I think here's my list. Hold on.
Yeah, shipping from Toronto takes 2 to 3 weeks generally.
I knew you wouldn't be too pissed off if, here, I won't show your address, but yeah, yours will go out on Thursday as soon as I restock.
No problem.
Yeah.
At least yours won't get stuck on the bridge.
Oh, for God's sakes.
So if I subscribe today, do I get a stove?
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah. When I get them back in.
It
This Thursday, but yes.
What might be helpful if you had era specific subscription, so that if you're an early rail modeler, you don't end up with
Yeah.
some contemporary item that you can't use.
Most of them tend to be more animal and people things. So fortunately, mooses tend not to be era specific.
Yeah, I'm very sensitive to that in terms of trying to make it as, I mean, when you take all the eras, all the geographies, all the ecosystems, et cetera, into account, I would probably need like 6 different packages going out. You know, are you an East Coast modern, or are you a West Coast transition? You know, it would be too, the whole idea is like X number of boxes that are exactly the same, just get picked and packed and go out. So I am sensitive to that. Having said that, my theory is always, you're going to get a ton of stuff. And if you don't like it, then that's a great excuse to go to your friend and give them a gift, or trade it, or, you know, or start a module. You know?
If anybody is a subscriber and doesn't want their jet ski and rider, I'll be happy to take those off your hands.
Yeah. It's like trading cards. Need it, want it, got it.
Gotta find it, gotta collect them all.
Yeah, exactly. I'll 2 moose for a duck. But yeah, it's fun.
All right, any other questions? Well, in that case, Donald, I believe you had questions / proposal to make. So if you want to come up live,
Thank you. I'm live.
do you have video?
I don't, but I don't need to show you anything to propose it. I live outside of Washougal. You know where Camas and Washougal are. Most of you do anyway, I think. My interest was to see if there's any sort of a round robin operating group within this local division of NMRA. I was a member years ago, but I just didn't have quite enough shared interest in my O-scale, 3-rail, high-rail hobby to keep it back then. But at this point, I've got a large layout, Chicago Northwestern and Chicago and Southern Wisconsin simulated as much as one can in a basement, with passenger operations and some freight. And I'm looking to see if there are other sort of enthusiastic operators who enjoy each other's company and rotating around to layouts. It'll give me more motivation to get further finished on the layout, as well as a fun thing to do with other people. Richard, you presented on operating, so you're obviously one person with that kind of an interest.
Yeah, unfortunately, mine is, there's a reason I'm using a Milwaukee tail end on my background, because what you see is not at all attractive back there. I've torn it down and starting to redo.
Oh, I
But
was
yeah.
hoping that you'd bought one of those cars and had it in your backyard.
It would be nice.
So
Your neighbors disagree.
it sounds like at this point, none of you know of such a group in the area yet.
If you want to post your email to the chat, you can put that up. Or anybody who would like to talk to Donald about this, send me an email. My email's out all over the place, and I'll forward it to Donald.
That'd be great. While I was listening to the presentations, I just wrote up my order for the last couple of available back issues of the OPSIG magazine. I'll see if there's anything in there that might be interesting in our area too.
And I know some of the people that are actually online right now do have operating sessions, but it's always a case of sometimes too many people, not enough sessions with
Right.
COVID restrictions and all that. But
Yes, there's space and other restrictions. Yes.
And unfortunately, I'm about 70 miles too far south.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for a few moments of the time. Interesting presentations today.
We're trying to
just
do
post
this
it on what you find.
I'm just going to say goodnight, all.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Really
being here.
appreciate it.
All right, the wife is wondering if I'm dead or whether I fell into some resin, so I'm gonna head home for dinner.
It's
home and
that
have
beer
dinner.
next door.
Yeah, we do have a beer fridge in here too. All right, thanks again. Thanks, Jeff. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Aloha.
So does anybody else have anything of general interest?
Well, I've got a tidbit for Bob. I ran across a Etsy supplier earlier this week, and I bought 35 cars, all in the range of 24 to 29, and they were $3 a pop.
N scale?
So N scale, and he does HO as well. His site's looking pretty picked over right now. I only saw one early HO scale on there at this point, but you might be able to talk to him and see when he's going to have some more available. But they're at $3 a pop. He casts them in clear resin. So again, you just paint out what you don't like. And it's a slightly blue resin as well. So it's got that kind of car glass shine to it. But if you want, Jeff, do you mind if I put it in the chat?
Please do.
And you can do with it as you might like. I haven't seen them yet, other than the pictures on the website. But they, for populating a whole N scale layout with period pieces. My daughter bought me two N scale pickup trucks from 1927-ish, and there were $17 a pop. And that's going to, like he said, that's a lot of work to assemble them. These I just have to paint.
Mr. Bunza, anything amazing in the world of animation?
I've got way too many projects going on. I have a question for you though, Jeff. Have you heard anything about the PNR convention in, was it April or May?
It's in May.
Whether they're looking at Zoom clinics, or they're committed to do everything in public? I just had notice of another meeting in May that said they're not going to do it in person.
As far as I know, everything's still planned to be live.
Yeah.
I don't know that First Division's got anyone who is capable of zooming stuff like that out of the hotel. I can make inquiries.
Yeah, with the ambiguity of whether or not they're going to go through, I'm a little bit concerned. There are other people that are canceling in-person events that far out.
Well, with any luck, we'll be maskless by April 1st. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Wood.
Say what?
Wood.
Yeah, I know that there was at least one person, I'm not sure where, that was saying that if they were going to have to wear masks, they weren't coming. So I'm assuming they were outside of Oregon. So it is, to say, a slightly fevered topic. And thus one I'd like to avoid. At least here. Does anybody have anything else? Failing that, and since nobody's reminding me I've forgotten anything, gentlemen, thank you very much. And I will get out an email with the address for next month's meeting, probably in the next couple hours.
You have somebody on tap for clinics?
I do not. I'm very welcome volunteers. Are you volunteering?
Not yet.
Okay.
Usually I get the emergency call.
I'll claim to be guilty of that, yes. Yes, always looking.
Jeff,
Collins,
March will be difficult.
you mentioned that last month, yes, so I was.
Yeah,
figuring-
winter rail is that third weekend, and it's both days of the weekend.
Oh, are we fighting winter rail this time?
Oh,
I may want to rethink whether or not we're doing anything next month. Board,
No.
expect a call of some sort, at least an email.
We're set for the 19th is what we've targeted, right? The 19th of March?
Yeah, because it's exactly 1 month after this one, and
Yeah.
due to February's 28 days, it just ends up being the same date.
Yep.
Always like that about March. Anyhow, so more news later in that case.
All
I
right,
just
bye
want-
all.
Let me just remind everybody again, we're looking for good candidates for PNR officers and division. So I'll leave that thought with you. Anybody has an idea of anybody that would be capable of doing that, please let us know.
All right, thank you. And
bye-bye.
see you sometime in the next month or two.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Good,
Okay.
thank you.
Aloha, everybody.